conference. I'm really excited to have this many people here. So thank you for joining us. You must be all very interested in this topic of employer engagement and work-based learning. So I think we've heard a lot at this conference about certainly the path to success for young people and how we ensure that they get the skills that they need in order to be work ready, how employers are helping to fill their workforce pipelines in new and interesting ways. And I think largely, for a very long time, the onus of that responsibility to build those opportunities has really fallen on schools. And they have really been the ones coordinating a lot of this activity. But we know that it is usually a very well-intentioned, very focused person within a school system that might not have connections to industry that are necessary in order to scale really high quality and much larger scale work-based learning opportunities, career-connected learning opportunities for young people. And so, part of the conversation is how do we engage employers in a much stronger way to ensure that they are part of a solution here. The last panel that we had talked about new models around work-based learning and how they're doing this. But we wanted to talk a little bit with our panelists, this wonderful group of ladies that is working in very different ways to ensure that employers are really engaged in this process. And so I will start maybe just by asking each of you to introduce yourselves and a little bit about the program that you're running or working with and how you're helping to engage employers in this process of ensuring skill building for youth.
Yeah, so great to see everyone. So interestingly enough, so those of you that know Tom Vander Ark, he described me as the godmother of work-based learning yesterday. So I'm not sure if that made me old or just really experienced. But I will say, learned a ton over the last 23 years and being involved in designing, developing, and executing, implementing work-based learning programming. And so, believe it or not, I actually started my first 16 years as a VP of HR at a manufacturer in Wisconsin at Generac Power Systems. And that's really where our model was evolved and created from because of the same reasons that really exist today for many manufacturers. That we were getting young people coming to our doorstep ill-prepared for the workforce. And so we decided that as an employer, we were either going to do something about it and be part of the solution, or we would continue to have the problem, right? So we basically flipped the classroom, and we said in 2000, we were going to create an employer-led work-based learning model for high school students that was really going to engage young people who needed that hands-on type learning. And so, interestingly enough, 5 years ago, we even got smarter, and we decided that we really wanted to expand outside of Wisconsin and really look at ourselves as also a technical intermediary that was really going to be able to bring together education, business, and communities to really be able to help them design, develop, and execute quality work-based learning. We believe, like ASA does, that all students should have access to work-based learning experiences before they graduate high school. And so now, more recently, we've been creating regional work-based learning models and overall ecosystems that can scale statewide, but then also execute effectively locally. And so we're super excited about all the work that we've been doing recently, but so much more to do.
Great, thanks Stephanie. Jack.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm Jack Oligus. I am a head of education partnerships with Amazon Future Engineer. So those of you who are not familiar with the program, we're a part of the Amazon in the Community organization, which is Amazon's philanthropic arm. And we really focus on increasing accessibility of computer science education and career exploration opportunities for students, and we focus on those furthest from educational justice. So we typically have the least access to those type of opportunities. And so we build programs and products that work to, have students learn more about career opportunities that are available to them, that enhance their skill sets, and then really provide the pathways for them to go towards those careers if it's something that's of interest to them. So just a few quick examples of some of the different things that we do. So we have lighter touch experiences that are both in-person and virtual, like career talks, career tours and field trips for students. On the work-based learning side, we're building out programs like high school externship programs in partnership with school districts and local partners for students to get hands-on immersive experience and meet lots of different Amazon employees in different roles. And then we have a robust 400 student per year scholarship and internship program where students are really getting that high school to college and career pathway opportunity with a $40,000 scholarship to pursue engineering and then a paid 12-week internship program after their first year of college. So really getting that hands-on learning experience early on. So that's just a few of the examples of the programs that we run and we reach millions of students every year with the programmings that we do.
Amy, that is so exciting.
You look like you wanted to ask a follow-up question.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy Lloyd. I'm the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the U.S. Department of Education. I have the most exciting policy portfolio at Ed. I have the honor of serving with a terrific team in community and technical colleges, correctional education, adult education and family literacy, and CTE, career and technical education, including career and college pathways. And Secretary Cardona, along with Secretary Walsh at the time and Secretary Raimondo in the White House, the First Lady, launched with me last fall a new initiative called Unlocking Career Success. So the Secretary's outlined his priorities in a Raise the Bar, Lead the World priority set. There are three main goals. One is around academic excellence, another is around boldly improving learning conditions, and the third is around global pathways to a stronger, more vital economy, to more economically engaged and competitive young people, to a brighter future for us all. So on academic improvement, we're really thinking about how to accelerate student learning and ensure that students have a full, well-rounded, comprehensive education that's more expansive than I think how we have traditionally thought about it. What do we need to really ignite hearts and minds in learning? Boldly improving learning conditions, social, emotional, mental health, student well-being, holistic considerations. We can have the best content in the world and the best teachers in the world, but we need our students to be able to come to school and have their families be healthy and safe so that they can engage in learning productively, and also strengthening and diversifying and retaining our educator pipeline. Our educator workforce is part of that as well. Like, we know we need to make sure that we build out career pathways in education. But the third is really where my work shines, and that's both thinking about multilingualism as a superpower and multiculturalism as a superpower, because if we are going to compete in a global economy, we need to make sure that our young people have a global perspective. And so that's one aspect, but the big anchor, and the Secretary is most on fire about career pathways. And how do we ensure every young person, starting in middle grades, if not earlier, starts having deepening exposure to the world of work so that they can make decisions in high school about who they are, their possible futures. I have a friend who's here at the conference, he's now with Strata. John Furr always used to tell me, Amy, college is a really expensive career exploration program. Yeah, it is. Like, how do we bring this more into the P-12 space and ensure that all students, not just those who are really lucky to be engaged in high quality, fantastic career and technical education, which is over half of high schoolers are in CTE, by the way, but how to make sure all students have connections to careers. And work-based learning is one of 4 keys to unlocking career success. We know that every young person needs to have meaningful connections to the world of work, meaningful intergenerational relationships with professionals. And sometimes you have to see it to be it. We're limited by our own exposure and experiences, and we need to be more deliberate and systematic and equitable about ensuring all students have these meaningful connections to careers through work-based learning. So I'm so excited to have this panel.
Thank you, Amy. And lots to delve into there, so I look excited to get back to it. Mandy.
Yes, my name is Mandy Hildebrand. I work as the Chief Services Officer at Genesis Works. At Genesis Works, our mission is to provide pathways for career success for high school students growing up in underserved communities. And we do that through skills training, through meaningful work experiences, and then by building impactful relationships and networks. So we work with school districts to identify students who in their junior year can apply and go through an application process for our program, and then we train students throughout the summer of their between junior and senior year with a mix of professional skills and then also technical skills. So then during their senior year, we partner with employers who provide year-long internships for our students. So we're working 20 hours a week paid Our students earn on average about $14 an hour. So that they can earn that real-world experience during their senior year. And we provide wraparound services with program staff that are dedicated to each of our students so that they can track how are our students doing, how are the relationships with supervisors doing, and what are the additional resources and tools that students need in order to achieve success. So think financial literacy, think college and career planning, how to fill out FAFSA, all the types of things that the students that we work with don't automatically have access to and that schools are hard pressed to provide on a consistent basis given all the demands.
That's great. And I realized I forgot to introduce myself, so I'll go back down the line. I'm Julie Lambers, Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Corporate Social Responsibility for American Student Assistance. We are a national nonprofit focused on ensuring all young people have access to career exploration activities and can navigate a course to education and career success. So, Amy, let me go back to you for a minute. And I think one of the things you said about college being a really tough career exploration experience is true, and it is also extremely risky for most young people to use that as the opportunity to figure out where their place is in the world. Your colleague Roberto Rodriguez was asked this morning about a quote that Secretary Cardona said that he wants to ensure that no one ever asks when they're in school, why am I learning this or why am I here? So can you talk a little bit about the department's commitment to ensuring sort of that relevance for young people and that is the opportunity in K-12 to help young people self-identify what their interests and passions are so they can more deliberately navigate that path to career success?
Absolutely. Well, and it's about putting into the hands of young people and their families like the data, the access to opportunities, the ability to make real choices about their futures. And we need to start much earlier than 11th or 12th grade. We need to think about what we're doing in elementary, what we're doing in middle grades, and how we have a developmental approach to supporting young people to explore who they are. And yes, passion and purpose, but also thinking about connection to society and community and how one student's interests might connect to challenges or opportunities in their community, and also economic security. So how are we ensuring that we're really putting labor market information in the hands of students and families to understand their viable interest in a career may or may not result in having a job in that field. And so I think about even the trajectory from P12 to and through post-secondary is often disjointed, fragmented, hard to access and navigate. Even those who do manage to graduate with a post-secondary credential, like many are un or underemployed in fields outside of the things that they studied. And so how do we ensure that we're really bringing the best to bear what we know about the economic trends, especially with the huge investments from Investing in America, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, CHIPS and Science Act, Inflation Reduction Act. The labor market is going to change tremendously with the trillions of dollars now beginning to come out and touch the ground. We need to support our young people to make informed decisions about how to engage in and lead our economy into the future in these fields. And this is the opportunity to redesign our high school experience, but really our whole P12 experience to be more community and career connected, and to think about how we situate learning as a constant that happens in multiple contexts instead of a variable dependent on time in classrooms. So we're really thinking about the role of career advising, guidance, navigation systems over time for students, and how we incorporate meaningful, increasingly deepened experiences such as those that have been described for students to engage in real-world work-based learning, ideally paid, and we also look for your apprenticeship or apprenticeship. And so thinking about how we structure schools to orient to partner with workforce.
In a completely new
partner
way,
with employers in completely new ways, recognizing that it's not what schools are built for currently. So how do we need to shift our design of the world of school to more to better prepare our students for connecting to the world beyond?
And the department recently launched a grant around work-based learning. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So we just closed a challenge. You talked
Yeah,
about
challenge,
the
yeah.
Careers Aid.
Yep.
Yes, I'm very excited about that.
And what do you hope to gain from that, I guess is the big question.
So that was a challenge to the field to help us think differently about innovations in youth work-based learning. And so it just closed, last week, I think. I have not yet seen the entrance. I cannot wait to read. But the use of challenges in the federal government, like we have formula grants that go out to states, we have discretionary grants, but we have these challenges that really help us harvest the best thinking and lift up best practices. And so we're building a community of practice around innovation in youth work-based learning, recognizing that the world of work has changed. We're now in increasingly remote and hybrid environments. What does that mean for youth work-based learning? how do we ensure that students really are connecting with professionals in meaningful ways that meet them where they are and help them plug in and develop and showcase their skills and build their confidence? And so I'm excited to see what we get from this. We've got lots of entrants in that challenge that will then go to a round 2. We'll work on, in the next round, partnering with them to strengthen and build out some more of their systems approach to innovation and work-based learning.
It's really exciting, right? Really exciting work. Jack, let me turn to you for a minute. As I mentioned at the outset, I think we tend to see that a lot of times employers are pointing to education systems to say, you're not providing the type of talent that we need in order to fill our jobs. Go out and fix this and then come back to us. Amazon is taking a different approach with the work that you are doing. So how, talk a little bit. You talked a little bit about some of the models that you have underway in order to do this. But why has Amazon really made this a priority? Obviously, if it's not your primary business objective, right, to help with this work, but you've made it a huge priority in the work that you're doing. And I think, as we are talking to employers about how you balance between this need to sort of help build the pipeline with your business objectives, you're in a unique position that you're already underway with that work. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we all know that students, especially those from underserved and historically underrepresented communities, really have a lack of access to these career exploration and skill building opportunities. And to Amy's point, going back to kindergarten, as far as kindergarten, these stereotypes and limiting a sense of belonging for students really does start all the way back in kindergarten, especially in STEM subjects in what we look at for our research. And so, we really want to make sure that these students have role models and they have these skill building opportunities to really build their best futures and have that pathway ahead of them. So we built the Amazon Future Engineer program and launched it in 2018 to ensure that students have that full K through 12 and early college opportunities to get that skill building and career exploration. And if they'd like to pursue a degree in that field and have the opportunity at Amazon, at other tech industries, or somewhere else in the field, that technology is everywhere. So we just want to ensure that everyone has that opportunity along the way.
But it is not primarily to build a workforce for Amazon. It is sort of a nice offshoot, but not necessarily your primary goal.
Right, we just want to, we want it to be a universal opportunity for students, especially those who typically have the least access.
And where are your programs operating?
So we actually have, it's nationwide here, and then we have global programs as well. So we have France, the UK, Germany, and India and Canada.
And is it primarily an in-person model or virtual?
There's a number of different ways that we work it. So we work with national nonprofits like Code.org and Project STEM on the curriculum side of things to really scale those opportunities. I work in Washington and really focus on our headquarter region. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is in person with Amazon employees, getting out in the community, providing really that in-depth opportunity that we were talking about a little bit before for students who are local in our backyard really and have those opportunities to see themselves in the pathway there.
Excellent. Stephanie and Mandy, let me turn to you for a minute. So you work really as intermediaries trying to bring employers into the process. What is the value proposition you make for the employers you're engaging with, knowing that a high school work-based learning experience will likely not immediately lead to the pipeline problem an employer is trying to build. It's a much longer tail to get them where they need to be. So what is the value proposition for your employers, Stephanie?
So the one thing I will share, one thing I will share, we have some down below here. What we created it's called the business case for work-based learning and why you need to act now. So it's a little bit of a how-to and lays out for employers what the value proposition and what the value is for them on work-based learning. And I will say, initially, it's really reaching out to employers as partners and having a shared value on what those shared goals are for the region, what the shared goals are between education and business, and I'm sure you've been through all of that as well. I think that initially there's basically four things that that we look at. One is helping them build a talent pipeline that they otherwise wouldn't have had access to. Many of these people don't even know, or many of these young people don't know what some of these careers are, that they even exist. And so it helps employers really early on give them exposure to something that's really cool that they didn't know even existed. I think with employers, it allows them to get involved in the educational process and customize that training. I've had a lot of our employers say there's no way that K-12 or post-secondary can keep up with the level of technology that we do. So by bringing these young people onto our floor, into our businesses, we can be part of that educational process and not have to redo or undo some of that training, but actually elevate and escalate some of that. So that's another one. And then retention is a huge piece of this. And not only is it retention for you get people into these careers that actually want to be there, but also retention for current employees. We've had a lot of, I would call them some of the older generations that are in some of these facilities that our apprentices and our students come into, and they're the first ones to say, I am not going to be babysitting these kids. I don't know what they're doing here, but I'm not interested. And about 6 months later, they wouldn't let them leave their departments, right? And so they are the advocates, they are the coaches, they are the mentors that truly help these young people understand not only what skills are needed, but, in general, but the life skills that are needed as well. And then the recruitment piece, I think, is an obvious one, that the cost of recruitment lowers, when you invest early in this process. But I would also say the access to more diverse group of young people who otherwise not only wouldn't see these as careers for them, but they wouldn't even have access to any of this type of work at all. And so I think we're helping employers also see that this is an opportunity for them to open up the diversity of their overall workforce. And so, when you look through all of those things and you sit down with the businesses, at the end of the day, you just say, it's just good business to be doing this. And that's the conversation that we tend to have.
Mandy, how about you? I mean, I know you do a lot of intense training of young people before you send them off to these experiences, but it still must be fairly daunting for employers to take on young interns. So what is your value proposition to them?
Yeah, I think it can be, and also kind of to Stephanie's point, we know that there is a need for talent pipeline and there's a need for diversifying talent pipelines. And so what we're doing at GenesisWorks is saying, what if we gave you that pipeline? We trained them, we gave them a fully paid internship, they're on our payroll, so you don't have to deal with the administrative lift of that, payroll, taxes, etc. And then you have support from us and our program staff, again, to help make sure that students are succeeding in their internship and that supervisors are getting what they're needing by monthly touch points and 2 performance reviews. There are a lot of, safety nets to help ensure that this is an impactful experience. And so it is an investment in the future of the talent pipeline, but a key thing that we say when we talk to employers is please don't create a job description for an intern. What are the types of roles that you see turnover in consistently that you're gonna need a talent pipeline for? And then why don't we build the pipeline for that through these high school interns? You will have them for an entire year, and then you have the opportunity to hire them after they graduate from high school, or to continue while they're in college or pursuing certification by continuing to intern with you. GenesisWorks will support that. So it just gives a lot of different opportunities for employers to tap into this pipeline in a way that eliminates some of the barriers that make it seem as though this seems like a nice thing to do, but I'm not sure how to get the resources to make it successful or impactful for my bottom line.
Yeah, and there are lots of reasons for employers to say no, right? Transportation challenges, liability of having someone in a workplace. Stephanie, how have you helped employers work around some of those? Because they're not absent,
Right.
You just helped them manage that.
Yeah, and I think initially it is to help employers understand that it doesn't have to be that hard. I mean, right? Different ways of plugging in, and I think giving them different options, and especially as they can engage earlier in that process too of exposure and some of those experiences, they really can plug in at different times. Also building coalitions of employers, so it's not just one employer that's got to take on the burden for an entire school system, because that's tough, right? The employers are about time and money, and this either fits or it doesn't. And so I think helping them initially, kind of understand that takes away some of those other types of barriers. I think it also is becoming the experts, like you are, Mindy, too, is, they sometimes put artificial barriers in place because they just don't know, right? They just don't understand. And I think when you talk about safety, when you talk about, some of the, is the quality standards going to be there? Is the training and development? Those kinds of things. I think it is becoming those experts to help them navigate through some of that. And I would say also, back to some of the stuff that you were saying too, Mandy, we actually do walkthroughs with all of our employers to help them identify what those roles and responsibilities would be. And a lot of cases, they think of them as very, very entry-level types of jobs, and we open their eyes to what young people truly can do within these facilities and within these areas, and we elevate that conversation so it does become a value proposition to them again, and some of those barriers that were there before are suddenly not. I think the other was transportation. That's always a challenge that I'm sure all of us have been through. One of the creative things that we've done in partnership with one of our employers, and also an automotive dealership in the area, is that one of our employers said, look, we've got some folks that are at the point of retirement, and we want to keep them on, maybe part-time. They could be your drivers. We'll pay for that. And then one of the automotive facilities in the area, or dealerships in the area, is offering one of their vans for us to use. And that's just a piloted type of opportunity that's saying, when you bring the whole ecosystem into play, there's a lot of these barriers that can really be addressed. So those are just a couple examples.
Amy, have you thought, and maybe this is too early, and once you look at the results of the challenge and see where people are lying, but are there policy considerations that you've had around how do we eliminate some of the barriers to employer or incent employer behavior in engagement around work-based learning and other career-connected learning opportunities?
Absolutely, and Stephanie, I many years ago I worked on a publication called Not As Hard As You Think, literally about employer engagement.
And all these years later, we're still talking about it.
We're still having this conversation, and I think about this big wall of no, like you've got FERPA and HIPAA and OSHA and all the acronyms. It's daunting, and then you have like liability insurance and workman's comp, but we find that there are smart workarounds that protect students. Like we care about their safety and workplace safety, but also I find that the barriers are often of employers' own making in their own policies too. And so how to help employers think creatively about opening their workplaces in new ways to young people, and how to incentivize it is a great question. I would love to learn from anyone here of ways that you've seen it successful. Like we've seen tax-related incentives, and those are, hit and miss it seems, and sometimes gets folks to the table, but does it keep people at the table? I've seen in, cities where mayors have strong youth employment programs, for example, like mayors really doubling down on this and requiring employers who want to either expand their footprint or locate in their city, committing to X percentage or number of students in high school engaged in work-based learning. So I've seen local leadership engaged there. From the federal level, the Perkins funds that fund career and technical education, we're also about to run a new grant competition called Career Connected High Schools related to unlocking career success that will also have work-based learning as a core element of it. We have funding for career and technical education that I think provides for far more flexibilities than most people realize. And I really would love our states and locals to make sure that the programs of study we're designing across secondary and post-secondary with our community and technical colleges have strong components of work-based learning throughout, not just in high school, but into and through that first post-secondary credential too. Because we have this vicious cycle right now of we need job experience to get a job, but how do you get a job without job experience? So the only way that we can help young people and prepare them for the success, if we're not sounding the alarms about this right now, something's wrong. We have a strange labor market that's super tight, and yet youth unemployment is still at an all-time high. Like, what is going on here, and how do we like elevate the importance of youth in future strategies, not just, you know, as a corporate social responsibility, doing good sort of thing, but as something that is vital to our economy, to the future of our communities, and to employers' well-being. Like, youth are the strategy for building a strong talent pipeline for our future. And so what are the incentives we can do on the education and workforce system sides to help streamline employer engagement, have clear menus of options that have clear returns on their investment of time, and have really like incredible partners and intermediaries and in business and industry leading the way as exemplars for more businesses and industry to step up.
That's great. So, Amy, you touched on this issue of you can't get a job unless you have that job experience, right? I think 50% of jobs still come through someone you know, and so that social capital is enormously important. It's not just about building skills, but really about building access to career. So I just love you to get a sense from all of you how you're prioritizing that mentorship, social capital piece in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, and the mentor piece is key, right? You know, and we do actual mentor training. So in a lot of cases, again, making it easy for our employers. Let us help you identify your high potentials. Let us train and develop them and help them understand how to work, engage with young people. And so that's been a huge piece, but I think on the social capital piece too, is that our students often don't understand what access they truly have. You know, the point people that they have, the mentors, the people that they come in contact with through these experiences are huge. And where do they capture that? How do they capture that? How do they connect that? Those are the things that we help them do through that process. So over the years, right, they're actually building not only a resume that just sings, but they're also building, you know, a huge social network that they can utilize when they need to go to that next step. And they know that you have permission to call. You have permission to reach out. But that also makes it really important for them to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward in executing at the workplace, right? So they know that that social network is not only important for them to access, but they better be doing pretty well or they won't be able to access it, right? So those are just a couple things.
And that really leads to the strong employer engagement on your end, because it's not just a pet project for someone that this intern's gonna leave and I'm never gonna interact with them again, but you really want strong workplace mentorship as a part of the program to ensure long-term success. Jack, do you think about this in the work that you're doing, how you're building those networks?
Yeah, so you know, we think about this in a few different ways in terms of, you know we have so many employees from different backgrounds, have different skill sets, and so we look at it in terms of, you know, we have the shorter term career talk type opportunities, so students can, from kindergarten all the way through, you know, 12th grade, can have those opportunities to just learn about the different careers and see if it's something that they're interested in. And then going deeper in terms of our externship program, where we have lots of different employees who come in person, do activities with the students, you know, and do some networking there. And then within our internship program with our freshmen in college, they all have mentors that get assigned to them within their programming and longer term, so they can stay in touch with them. You know, get ideas from them. What courses should I continue to take, and get that navigation that's not always available to them.
Someone that's actually been through it.
Exactly.
Right? Which is usually critically important.
Yeah.
Mandy, maybe go to you, and then Amy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we elevate social capital more in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's both about building the social capital, but then ensuring that students have the skills to access it. So in our skills training program, we do a lot of work on how do you network and how do you set up your resume. You have to have a LinkedIn profile. Here's how you connect with people. Here's how you write. Here's how you ask people for advice. And then, you know, we ask students at the start of summer training, at the end of summer training, throughout the internship, like, who's your network? And start and reflect on, you know, to points I made here, your network's much bigger than you think. But the exercise of actually having to articulate who's in your network, and then also if they're not thinking about their supervisor as, well, why not? Why aren't you thinking about them as a connector? And getting them to flex that muscle in a new way. So I think that's really important. And then it's about giving them access to different people, and different people can see how extraordinary they are. I was talking to a student at an event a few weeks ago. I was like, we had this volunteer come in, and they were kind of talking to us like we were children, and then they heard us talk, and they were so impressed, and they wouldn't stop talking to me. It's like, yes, and it's the power of just like not finding your voice, but just having the opportunity to use your voice in a new way, that I think is really important for social capital. Because like, do I have the network, but then also am I able to leverage that? And are people telling me, yes, that is, you do have authority to do that, and in fact, like, you need to take up space in the room because you are more than deserving of it.
It's that confidence too,
Yeah.
right? You know, that building the confidence where the students actually think, okay, yes, I have that name on there, but can I really, can I really put myself out there?
Yeah.
Can I really call? Can I really reach out? Can I really use that as a connector?
Because if you haven't
And
had
then-
access to business, if you haven't had
Right.
access to these rooms, then you don't know how to leverage it. And so it's, I really think about social capital, it's not just like, it's what does it mean to have it? Not only do you have the network, but what does it mean to leverage it?
Well, and how to learn to do that, like making the implicit explicit.
Right, exactly. Don't just assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how to ask questions, and how to be vulnerable. That's really hard for all of us.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you're asking, a teenager to, come to an adult who they may or may not feel very comfortable with yet to ask about, guidance and mentorship. Like, that's a big step for any human being to do.
Absolutely.
And I think about like the incredible value that Gen Z brings to our lives, to our workforce, to our communities, and the role of mentorship being multi-directional, not just the wise professional mentoring the young upcomer, but rather like I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I've learned so much from her about the evolving world that as she perceives it and as her generation engages in it. And I want to make sure that as we're building networks of social capital, that we really are creating space to learn from our young people in workplaces too, and helping employers understand their role in mentorship and being open to thinking differently about their work or learning from young people's voices on how things might get better, because I mean, that's what we're all here for, is to learn from one another. And I really want to double down on the power of weak ties. We know there's been research around this for decades, and this is essential, and it's deeply inequitable, frankly. People have everybody has social capital of some sort. We all have communities, we all have people who care for us, but we do not necessarily have the reach into the growing industry sectors, into the seats of power, into the room where it happens.
Absolutely.
And how do we make sure that we more fully democratize on-ramps into all of these spaces for all young people?
And work-based learning has historically been a place that is extremely inequitable and only based on the social capital you
Yes.
know and can access, right?
Yeah.
And so disrupting that is really, really important. Jack, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna, around the equity piece, so being really intentional about building out equitable opportunities, and working, like you were saying, really involving actually the students in the building process,
Yeah.
involving students, involving teachers, really understanding what the community needs, and building backwards from that, and then also building partnerships with districts, with community partners who understand the needs of those that you're trying to reach. So an example of this, and actually this goes back to your point about building out kind of new experiences and thinking about different ways. I worked with the CTE department in Seattle Public Schools to build out our externship program, and so we're able to reach 70 students within one district by doing that, and provide the students CTE credit towards their graduation pathway, and provide them stipends for their time. So it's really, working with our partners to build out and create something that works for students as well. And then also getting even deeper, we work with and support a department within Seattle Public Schools called the Office of African American Male Achievement. And so through that partnership, we're able to work with a partner that is already trusted by students. And so they're able to go out and market the program to students who may not feel like they belong there, and may not have ever thought of the opportunity for themselves. So we're just able to create, these experiences for students who may have self-selected out otherwise.
So one of the challenges that I think we have in this work is that sometimes we always come at this from two different perspectives, right? Are we solving an employer problem with a pipeline challenge, which might have different outcomes and different things that we're measuring, versus are we solving a student problem of getting them the skills to be workforce ready? And they don't always meet in the middle, and I think that's where we need to do a lot of thinking about how we do that better to solve a joint problem. But I'd love to understand, Stephanie, and the rest of the panelists, like how you think about that data issue. What types of data do you track, and whose problem are you primarily looking to solve?
Yeah, so the best way that maybe I can describe that, especially from a data perspective too, is that for our students, we call them 360s. And so there is a more immediate feedback. We talk about data at the end of these programs. Well, we need a lot more data in the middle, and at the beginning as they're evolving, as they're growing. And so the 360s that we do with students actually gets the voice of industry and the voice of student all through this process. And so the students do their own reflection and their own review, and then that comes together with the employer's review, and then they sit and talk about it. And that's where there's progress made, that's where there's opportunities that are gained, that's where there's more immediate feedback. And we know our young people, if you talk to me about that 2 or 3 weeks, I don't care how old you are, is that really going to, give me any benefit? Probably not. So the more that we can provide that type of feedback, we can get that kind of data, we can use that then to help them make what those next steps need to be, what those growth areas, or give them very positive feedback to say, you know what, that has been awesome. You are doing, extraordinary work, keep that up. That just bolsters them to that next level. And so that's some of what we've been doing. I will say too, the ecosystem itself, as you look at shared goals between business and education and community, really having shared goals and then the metrics that match that, right? So defining what we are measuring, making sure everybody is on that same page, and then making sure that we get the outcomes that we're looking for. Jack?
Yeah, so one of the things that we really look at is something called intent to persist. So, we like you were saying, you want to see at the beginning of an experience, what are students' interests, say, in computer science or engineering or STEM topics, and how does that progress over the time to when they're finished with the experience? Are they now looking to continue taking another class in computer science or within STEM subjects? So we want to see if the experience is really impacting their outlook on those type of careers in the future. And then other simple things like NPS score. Is it something that they would like to, tell their friends about? Is it something that they'd like to tell another teacher about? So did they enjoy the experience as well? Because we know if they didn't enjoy the experience, then it's not something that they would come back to or have somebody, tell someone else to take up.
Do you measure at all the fact that they've decided now that they actually hate this, and that's a good learning for them?
that's all part of what we're doing too, right? It's the exposure.
Right.
And it's okay if it's not for them, but at least they've had the exposure to those opportunities.
So I think about, through Investing in America, I'm working very closely with the region of Columbus. Intel just expanded extensively in Central Ohio, as semiconductors are going to be expanding across the country. And even if they filled every spot in every program of study related to the semiconductor industry, they still need to quadruple or octuple the number of young people and adults going into that field to be able to live up to the promise of what this huge investment is going to have, not to mention the supply chain and all the kind of affiliated connections to that business and industry. And young people, I didn't know much about semiconductors as of a couple of years ago. I learned so much about clean rooms and wafer technology, all the things. But our young people don't know. The teachers who they're exposed to for the most part of their day have no idea. How are we doing a both and? Intel, or name your company. Any company that's expanding or has a need for workforce has a real need. And yet, how do we provide visibility into the incredible array of opportunities, largely STEM-driven, almost entirely excellent jobs with lifelong economic and social mobility potential, lifelong learning potential, and a whole array in the sub-baccalaureate space. There's so much opportunity, and there's often a disconnect between even understanding what the opportunities are. So just thinking about how we can it better open the doors to possibility and make real the kinds of experiences that young people can pursue, because there's a huge change. Like, it's a both and.
Mandy.
I think for outcomes specifically, there's short term and then there's longer term for our organization. So for short term, it's similar to what Stephanie you were saying. It's like, how are we measuring supervisor satisfaction with the program? Are you getting meaningful work from your intern? Do you have a positive relationship with your intern? Would you hire your intern? And do you feel like you're a better manager by having an intern? Because that's another value proposition for us as well, is that you're actually being able to get managerial experience with some support from us. Now, in all of that, we see like 85-90+% of our supervisors say yes, like, to all of those questions. And then similarly for students, like, are you doing meaningful work? Would you work for a company like this? Are you learning about the impact that you can have? And again, yes, because it's an exploration program. So that's one level of outcomes in the year. And then, at GenesisWorks, we're also trying to see, like, if we're giving you exposure now, what do you do with that exposure, and where are you 6 years out? And so we look at, like, the median income of our students 6 years out is $50,000 a year, $60,000 to $65,000 a year if they've got a college degree. 88% enter college. And then 61% get their degree within 6 years. So higher, it's about, like, how are you able to prove that being able to have access to these experiences early then impacts the types of path that you take forward.
Wonderful. Well, I think we are at time, so we're going to leave it there. I thank you, my panelists, for being here with us today. Hopefully, in 10 years, we will not still be talking about this issue, Amy. And your vision from a few years ago will have been fulfilled, that it is not that hard. We can get employer engagement and work-based learning, and that all of you are doing a great job to get us there. So thank you very much.